Hi guys, this is week 2, lecture 2, which will be the proposal lecture 2 of 3. This one's going to cover the contents. Last time we covered the maps and how it applies to the proposal. This time we're going to talk about the contents of the proposal itself. Now do keep in mind that every one of you is going to have a slightly different looking project because you have different angles, aims, goals. Some of you are in senior project design, some of you are in English, some of you are in different majors. So these are going to look a little bit different, and we're going to talk about which categories and headings and things that you need to have within each of your projects proposals. Okay, so last lecture we talked a little bit about this. I have brought this back to remind you of the sections. This time I've color-coded them a little bit so you can kind of find what we're talking about. These are the major sections here. We've got the introduction, the current situation, your project plan, which is of course the largest one, your qualifications, and your conclusions, which include your costs and benefits. All right, so we're going to talk with the green section, the introduction section. First of all, we got to keep a couple of things in mind. All of you are going to have an overview statement. This is kind of a brief roadmap of what we're talking about, what you're talking about in the document. It's meant to be 3 to 5 sentences in length. It is not like an English essay in which you kind of do the inverted triangle thing where you end in a thesis. That's too much for what we're looking about here. What we're talking about here in the proposal, which is brief, concise. A, what I'm talking about. B, why you should care. And C, where I'm going from here. So again, 3 to 5 sentences. Unless you're in senior design, some of those senior design people are requiring additional purpose or scope statements. If that's the case for you, then add those in here. So here you're going to say things like, the following document proposal that fill in the blank, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, you're not going to be saying things like, in America today, whatever, whatever, whatever. Tech writing is different. It's crisp, concise, coherent, the 3 C's, okay? Okay, so some background for you. Sometimes, like I said, the introduction contain a little bit more than those 3 to 5 sentences. If you are going to give some background information, this is where you're going to do it. Sometimes those are combined with other sections, so do keep in mind that you got to check with your senior design proposals. Different professors require different things. This is a general overview, so do read all of the information from all your classes. This is where you give kind of an overview of a sense of how you came to this project. Like, what is your background? Are you part of a company? Are you with a partner? These are pieces of information about context that we're looking for. And I'm not the only one looking for it here to see where you're going, how you came to it. If you're an English major or a non-engineer, you kind of want to give a sense of how you came to this project because you're not doing the same sort of project that an engineer would be doing. In this case, you'd be doing a review of the literature of what's out there on a technical subject, but we still want to know how you came to this. How did you choose this particular idea or subject that you're going to be spending an entire semester with? Okay, so outcomes. All of you have to have this section. The thing to keep in mind here is that these that objectives and outcomes are different than specifications. Specifications are later on. This is an overview. We want to talk about objectives and outcomes for the overall project itself. What do you have in mind? They need to be discussed in concrete terms, verbs like walk, design, build, read. They are measurable, observable, attainable, and specific. Those are very important for a proposal. So you can't, let's say you're one of those English majors and you're going to be doing a secondary research project. You can't see you're going to propose that you go out and read some texts. That's too vague. You have to say something like, I'm going to read 3 trade journals and I'm going to annotate 4 academic articles that did research. These are specific, they're measurable, they're verb-based. This is usually going to be a bulleted list, so include some sort of sentence that introduces your list, gives a context, but then bulleted list, concrete verbs, okay? I've given you a couple examples. Walk 50K by February 28th, or design prototype to verify. Bullet points. Okay, so we're going to move into the second section. This one I've made blue. This is your current situation. What is the current situation you're trying to solve? Go back in a second here. Okay. Begin with the problem you're trying to solve. How did it begin? How big is the problem? Who's affected, or possibly who's going to be affected if you're looking forward? This is a good place for you to talk about the scope of your project. There may be certain particular aspects of your project, or that you can see that you're not going to be addressing. Perhaps another team is going to address it, or perhaps it's just not something you can measure during this period of time that's a semester. This is where you're going to address that and say, I'm not going to take a look at this. Remember that you are persuading in this document here. You have to persuade us that there actually is a problem. And sometimes we're going to call this a statement of need or a problem statement. There's other different things that this section is called. I call it current situation. That kind of covers everything. You'll have to take a look at the nuances of those wordings and title it in a way that makes sense for what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. More on the current situation. We have to have evidence. Not only are you just going to state a claim here about a problem, but we have to have some evidence that this is true. Are there diagrams? Is there data? Are there statistics that show a decline in the productivity that you have mentioned? Maybe you're going to talk about how an existing product that you've seen or use is unsatisfactory, but we need data about why. How is it that this is the case? Avoid jargon. You're keeping this simple, but I do want to address a specific problem here. You are not dumbing down a proposal. Okay, so let's say you're an electrical engineer. You're talking to someone who is in a completely different field, who probably is similar to educational and knowledge-wise as yourself, but in a different field. So, for instance, you might be an engineer, but you're talking to someone who has a PhD in English, right? All of you will also have to do this sort of thing with marketing people. You have to be able to explain it to someone in a completely different field in simple terms, but not dumbed down terms. We're not trying to offend people. We're trying to keep things simple and clear. So assume that your people have that similar education status, but different sets of knowledge. Okay, that's what this whole class is about. Okay, now you want to know some things to avoid. Besides that, do not confuse the lack of something. Let's say you have read about a really cool gadget that's out there and you look at your company and they don't have it. You cannot assume that just because your company doesn't have this product that is indeed a problem. It may not be. So that would be circular reasoning, and that would be an issue where if you started to propose that your company needed it, you would have the lack of words to explain why. That won't work for you. Okay. For example, you're proposing to get, say, a four-wheeler for your landscape business because you want to move materials, you want to minimize your gas consumption, you want to stay competitive, and if you have a need for that in your particular business, that is going to be measurable and observable, right? If not, you're going to have some trouble with that, and you'll have to go back to the drawing board. Here's another issue. A lot of people assume that just because they have seen a problem, that their audience is also going to see that problem. That may not be the case. You may have a hostile audience in which you'll have to persuade them that there actually is a problem. So don't assume that just because you're talking about it, it's true. Your job is to show the problem and the situation and support it with evidence, not just tell me about it. So you need to include evidence, illustrations to prove your case. All right, so we're going to move to the next section. I made this one a red section. This is our project planning section. This is, of course, the longest, largest section. It contains the bulk of your proposal, the overall solution, and it also talks about the major and minor steps that you are going to need in order to produce the deliverable that you're going to produce. So usually you start this section with some sort of an introductory paragraph. It might have a heading of its own. It states the solution you're proposing, the rationale for why, and how your deliverable, whatever that's going to be, meets the stated need of solving this issue. Also in this category is how you're going to get that work done. How are you going to do those little steps? It needs to be systematic. There needs to be a list of jobs? What are these tasks that you have to complete? How long are they going to take to do them? How much are they going to cost? That discusses your method, your procedures, your timetable, your benchmarks. You're going to have subheadings here that talk about the various steps. Again, you might have illustrations. And you're still also you're persuading your audience how this works. Oh, some notes on Gantt charts here. A lot of people will use Gantt charts for this section. If you do, that's cool. If you're going to copy and paste, make sure it's very simplified, because otherwise it gets to be really clunky and bulky and it looks nasty and I can't read it anyway. So if you're going to use something that's very detailed at this point, include it as an appendix. So have it as a separate document. If you're going to make it part of this section, make it simplified so it's easy to use. Deliverable. What the heck is the deliverable? You might be wondering that, right? Deliverable has to be something that you're producing. So in this case, it could be a number of different things. It might not be a widget. It might be a service. It might be a computer app. It might be something, but it has something with some sort of physicality to it. It has shape or size or length. It includes materials, specifically pieces per hour, man hours, illustrations, sketches, photos. Sometimes you'll have like a really rough CAD drawing here, and eventually the white paper at the end will go back and have some more elaborate drawings. If you're a primary research person, again, those are our Section 2, Phase 2 people. This is an actual physical thing, device, apparatus. If you are a secondary research person, and those are English people and non-engineers, your deliverable is the white paper itself. At the end of the semester, the white paper itself is your deliverable. It is, if you're of the secondary research variety, your white paper is going to be much longer, much more in-depth, much more documented than the primary research people, who tend to have something smaller because their bulk of their time is put together in making this happen and creating it and testing and that sort of thing. Okay, I'm going to move to the purple section. This is your qualifications section. This section usually has some sort of brief biographical information about yourself and or your partner if you happen to have one. All the individuals who are working on this project need to tell us, who are you, why are you qualified to make this project happen. If you're a student and you're doing the research, we can assume that you know how to do research. You're a senior, you've done all kinds of research projects, so that's really not necessary to describe. But otherwise, oh, and if you have partners, make sure that this is where you tell me about these partners, and make sure that your partner also tells me that you're working together. That's important for me to put in my database fields. Let's see here. Oh, so that's basically your qualification section, just kind of to prove that you are capable of doing what you propose. The last section is your conclusion section. This kind of will tell you a cost-benefit analysis. Note that oftentimes when somebody picks up a proposal of yours, they will flip to the back to this section first to see if they want to continue with it, to look at it. That's possibly the case, so do keep in mind that people might be looking at this section first and then going back to the other sections. This one needs to show that whatever your cost-benefit, or whatever your cost that you propose, the benefit that you propose is greater than that. Okay, so some of you will have costs, some of you have small ones, some of you have large ones. It depends on what you're doing. But it also will state what steps are the next steps forward after, I propose that we do this. This is what I'm looking forward to. Best case scenario. After that, this would be my next steps forward. This is not an English essay conclusion where you restate the thesis and the main points. Not at all. It's very different. Okay, so what's next? This is to wrap this up here. You're going to consult that course calendar for deadlines, of course, for drafts of this that's coming up. I'm not going to keep an eye on you over your shoulder, so you have to do this on your own. Do keep in mind that it's important for you to communicate in the groups and the participation that we do, even though those are very small looking points. Those are weighted. Take a look at Proposal Lecture 3, which is also this week, by Thursday. And don't forget, if you haven't made that appointment with me, that you should do that right away. See you later.